Today's seminar, I'm going to be talking about the little things that make a big difference. And I only have about 45 minutes, so I can't cover everything. And we probably got a mix of group, people that know what they're doing, and we probably got some beginners, they're just starting out. But these little things, in my opinion, make a huge difference for a successful day out on the lake. I'll tell you a story. There was an older couple, this was back when I was guiding at Shelter Cove, that had been up to Odell, and the fishing was fantastic. I mean, everybody was catching fish. But they'd only caught one fish in 6 days, and they had a smaller boat, looked like they were using the right gear, and everybody was giving them advice. You need to be out at 4 o'clock in the morning. You need to be over in this area. You need to be this deep. You need to, your speed's off. You need to use this tackle. You got to use this dodger. I mean, they were just getting bombarded. And when I got done cleaning my fish, I went over to their boat and I said, "Hey," "what are you guys using for bait?" And they go, "Bait?" And I go, "Yeah, you guys aren't using any bait?" And they go, "No." And I go, "Woof, I'm surprised you guys caught one fish." I said, "Here, hold on a second." So I went to my boat, got them some corn, showed how to put them on the hooks. I said, "All that stuff will work. Go wherever you want. You're going to catch fish." It was fantastic. They went out and got 16. So it was just that one little thing that they weren't using bait or corn, that's what I like using for bait, that made it so that they didn't catch one fish. And I was like, I can't believe you caught one. But so it's not usually the really big things that people are missing out on. It's usually one or two little tiny things that make a huge difference when you're out on the lake. So first thing I want to talk about is what I call the meat end of your gear, and probably besides location is the most important thing that you can run, and that's your lure. The color of your lure and the way that your lure is set up makes a huge difference on going out kokanee fishing. For one, the leader length. I like 8 inches with my leaders, and I like all of them to be exactly the same. The reason for that is if I'm out fishing a lake and I've got a lure tied at 8 inches and I've got a lure tied at 15 inches, depending on what speed those fish are wanting, my one that's tied at 15, maybe they want a slower throw. They might be clobbering the holy crud out of that one, where my 8-inch one's throwing a little bit faster. They're not going to want to hit that one. So if you have all your lures tied at the exact same leader length, by adjusting your boat speed, you're going to get the same throw and same action off of your lure. So me personally, I like mine 8 inches from the barrel swivel to the tip of the lure. And just make sure that those things are consistent. The next thing that you want to check is just make sure that your leaders aren't damaged. There's nothing worse than hooking into a big fish and you've got a bad leader, or maybe your knots aren't tied properly, that you're just going to have a bad day on the water. The other thing that I like is I like actually having a barrel swivel tied to the dodger. I know there's a lot of people that will fold over their line and put it on there, but what happens with that is if you have a big barrel swivel or your line's thrown over, you're not going to get the same connection with your dodger. Technically, this line tied directly to your swivel is the best option because you're going to get more throw. But because I like switching my gear out all the time, that doesn't make any sense. So having a small, itty-bitty, tiny barrel swivel, you're going to get more throw from your dodger to the lure. You can see it basically is connected to that. So that makes a huge difference. And I had people complain. They're like, "God, why do you use such a small barrel swivel? I can barely see it to put it on the thing." And I said, "Well, trust me, those are not easy to tie on my lures that I sell. But having that really small barrel swivel makes it so that the line is basically connected to that. And it actually makes a huge difference on the throw that you get from your dodger to your lure. Remember, kokanee aren't hitting your tackle because they think it's a food source. You're pissing them off. So the more consistent throw you can get, the easier it is to dial that in. Here's another huge one, hook spacing and alignment. So there's a couple reasons why I like my hooks in line and the spacing that I have between them. I'm sure that you've been out and you see tackle manufacturers that will have one hook line this way and one hook line the other way. If your kokanee came in behind the lure and ate it like it was a food source, it's a great option because they're going to get a hook in the top of their mouth and they're going to get one in the bottom of their mouth. But kokanee don't attack your tackle like that. They swipe at it, so they're coming at it from the side. So if you have a fish that comes at it, and usually they hit the hook that's closest to the body of your lure, they'll hit it. If this hook's facing the other direction, you're basically going to have that hook hitting them on the top of the head, and it's not going to stick in their body. So I like my hooks perfectly aligned for that reason. And the other reason I like them perfectly aligned is because you are going to get better hydrodynamics off of your lure. If you have a hook that's offset, that lure is going to get more drag on it. So having them like this is like having two bicycles drafting each other, and you're going to get a better throw off of your lure. But having your hooks lined up like that, and the spacing I like is having that back hook set where it hits the furthest part of your first hook. The hook's going to be in a space where it's going to get them underneath the gill plate, possibly in through the eyeball or up through the nose. But I really like that back hook getting them up underneath the gill plate. The other reason I like them spaced like that is every once in a while you will have a kokanee that will hit this back hook. And if this back hook is spaced too far, there's no way this top hook's going to snag them in the head. And I'll talk about this later for downriggers, if you let them have a little bit of slack and they roll with the spacing here, if they do hit the back hook, a lot of times I will hook them with the front hook. And I can tell if a fish has been hooked with that front hook because I'm pulling them at a different angle. So I'll have a front hook snagged in their eyeball, and then this one will be buried in their gum. So hook spacing and hook alignment look like a really small detail, but they're absolute sticklers for me for fishing for kokanee. Corn. This is a huge one for me. Not all corn's the same. So hopefully people are using white Chopaic corn. That's what I use. I usually scent them up. I've got scent packs I sell, but I use Procure products. That's what I use for scent. But pulling a piece of corn out of your container is huge. And here's the reason why. These two pieces of corn are satisfactory to me, and these two pieces of corn I throw overboard. One's too short. You're not going to get enough hang off of your hook because it's going to be too close to it. I like these hanging off the hook, and I'm going to show you a picture on how to do it. And this one here still has a nodule. It wasn't cut. So the time and effort you have of spending, you can flip to the next slide. The time and effort that you have for trying to get scent to get sucked up into your corn, this is basically sealed. And this is what I call a dud piece of corn. So I am super picky when I get my corn out on making sure that I absolutely have the perfect corn. And you can show the next slide. And this is how I like them on my hook. I have them basically the cut part. This was on the cob, the round part. All the scent is inside the corn this way. And I have them barely hanging off the bell of the hook. So they're just barely hooked. They're basically hanging off. Couple reasons for that. One, they're going to travel in the water a lot better because the water is going to go over this way, which is going to give you more throw on your lure. Two, all the time and effort you did putting scent in them, it's going to slowly time release in the water column instead of being flushed out. And it just works a lot better. So don't thread them. Just make sure they're hanging. And I have people on my boat that will put corn on, and I check it before I deploy it. It's that important to me, and I'll be like, nope, that's wrong. Throw it out. Get my piece, put it on. It's super important. The way that you place the corn, making sure you're only using one piece per hook, and your leader link makes a huge difference. There was a guy up at Wallowa Lake that this last year, and there was tons of fish. Not very many big ones, but rainbows and small kokanee. I was throwing fish back left and right. And he came in to the boat dock, and him and his buddy were talking to me. He goes, man, I didn't get one bite. And I was like, whew, there's something majorly wrong if you didn't get a bite. You should have gotten something. At least a rainbow. They dumped like 30,000 of them in here yesterday. So I go, here, let me see your rig. So he had his Dodger. He had about 30 inches of leader with a lure, and he had literally 10 pieces of corn on each hook. And I go, well, let's fix that. So I gave him a lure, showed him how short to have it from the Dodger, showed him one piece of corn, and I was leaving that day. I wish I would have known how many fish he caught, but I guarantee you caught a bunch of fish that next day. So nothing big, wasn't like he was in the wrong spot, just he had it rigged wrong. Too much leader, corn was in the wrong spot. So this is huge, just a little tiny detail, but it makes a big difference. So this is for people that have downriggers on their boat. This one's huge. Having your clip set too tight. I've got 2 videos, and basically what I did for this part was I just randomly went on the internet, on YouTube. I think the first one's from Justin Wolf. The second one's from a guy in Canada, and I just wanted to show a video of people that have their clips to their downriggers set too tight and what happens when a fish strikes. Go ahead and play it. We've got fish coming after this presentation. He hit it. He was hooked. Didn't come off the clip. He's got it in his mouth there. He's hooked again. Didn't come off the clip. He probably wasn't hooked there, but you're going to see him pull this thing way off to the right. That one decided to leave. Probably he's got his mouth's all busted up. Here comes another one in. Taking it, pulled it all the way off to the side, did not come off the clip. Got hit again, did not come off the clip. Got hit again, did not come off the clip. He's hooked there. Finally, they know they have a fish. Now, I literally just watched at least 10 potential fish hit that and not come off the clip. There's a couple things that'll happen. One, you could be losing corn. My guess is that the presentation here had a whole bunch of pieces of corn, which is, in my opinion, not a good idea. But you are literally losing opportunity after opportunity after opportunity after opportunity of hooking a fish because your clip is set too tight and that is not getting released. You can show the next one. This one's out of Canada. This is an absolute huge fish. And you're going to see the fish hit the presentation and he's going to completely flip right there. He's hooked. Now he's not. Didn't come off the clip. Completely hooked. He comes back in, and he's going to hit it again, be completely hooked, and at that point he swims away, and I don't know how long this sat in the downrigger waiting for another fish to hit, but my guess is it didn't have any more bait on it. So this fish is going to come in again, and you can tell he's hooked because his body just completely flips out when he hits it. Hooked again, massively hooked, decided I'm out of here. 2 opportunities because clip was set too tight. And this is absolutely huge. When I go fishing, I want it, if I have a 4-inch Chinook up at Detroit Lake hit my gear, I want my clip to come off. One, I don't want to drag a 4-inch Chinook around the lake for the next half an hour while I'm waiting for a kokanee to hit. And 2, I want to get them off my line as fast as possible so I can deploy it and catch a kokanee. So for setting up your releases, these are the releases I use. They're called the Dubro, and I have them set super, super light. So when it goes in the clip, I clip it like that, comes right out. Clip it like this, boom, comes right out. I want them set super soft. You cannot load your rods real heavy if you have a light clip. I want to show the next picture. I want to show you how light I load my rods. These are super flexible rods, so it looks like they're loaded really heavy, but they're like this. They're barely set down. The more you load the rod, the more pressure you have on that clip for it to pop out on the up side of it. So you want your rods slightly bent, but not bent too far. And if I go by somebody's boat and I see that their rod is just buried all the way down, their clips are set too tight. And you are going to lose fish after fish after fish. You're going to drag fish. You're going to lose bait. So if your clips are set too tight, you were losing opportunity after opportunity. Or you're dragging something around that you don't want to catch, or you're missing bait. One of those 3 things is happening, and I see this pretty much on half the boats I go fishing by. Their rod is just buried into that clip. You want that fish to clip out on its own. Now, when the fish hits this and gets hooked, they have super soft mouths, they are instantaneously hooked. You don't have to go over there and grab the rod and reel it as fast as possible. I want them to naturally release. I want some slack in the line so they roll around and get that second hook snagged somewhere in the face. So when I'm on the boat with my wife and I'm doing a little bit of filming and she catches a fish and I'm filming it in and a rod gets off the release, I don't even need to touch it. They can just sit there. I'm traveling at 1 mile an hour, maybe 1.5. I've already got pressure on that fish. That rod can just sit there for whatever time. My wife will be like, grab that rod. And I'm like, nope, I'm filming. Grab the rod later. The only thing you got to worry about is bald eagles and hawks. Because if you get a fish floating up at the top, sometimes those things will come down. But that fish is hooked. Most of the time, if you lose a fish, it's because of human error. Or maybe your clips are too tight. So make sure your clips are a little bit looser. Remember that fish, kokanee are completely fragile. Another mistake I see people make is their rod is not up high enough when they're reeling it in. You want your rod up high. You don't want your tip down. I had a lady that I was taking on a guided trip with her husband, and she says, man, we hook lots of fish, but I can't land them. I was like, well, we'll figure out what's going on. And they like using braid, so braid doesn't have any stretch. So the first fish we hooked, I was watching her reel it in. She had her rod up like this, and as soon as it came to the boat and we were about ready to net it, her rod was pointing straight at the fish. Boom, it went off. And I go, well, we'll fix that. So I told her, I said, you got to keep that rod tip up. You want to bend in your rod. The other thing you don't want to do is set the hook. Remember, these are fragile fish. They got super soft mouths. You want to reel in super slow. I see lots of people, especially when I was doing the guiding, get a fish all excited, and they just consistently reel the whole time. You don't want to do that. You want to play your fish. So the fish hits my rod, I get it. Normally they're thrashing right off the bat. I usually don't reel at all. I just let them fight, let them fight, let them fight. Especially if I'm fishing deep. When I hook a fish at 80 feet, he's going to slowly come up through the water column because they have enlarged air bladders, and he's going to naturally come up. By the time he hits about 30 feet, that fish is going to get the bends and slow down. At that point, maybe I might start reeling in. So I'm just slowly reeling that fish in. What I used to tell clients that were on my boat when we hooked into a kokanee, and I had a really hard time with them, they'd always want to set the hook, they'd reel in super fast, and the rod tip was down. Those three were huge for new people on my boat. I told them, imagine that your wallet is on the end of that hook, your truck keys are in it, and you got 10 grand. And if you want to reel that thing in super fast and jerk and do all that, but if it was me, I'd be like, whoa, 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 I want to get home tonight. So just imagine you got your wife's wedding ring on it or something where you're just like, oh, I want to baby that thing in. They're fragile, super soft mouths. You saw in the two videos, they're fighting against a 10-pound weight and, however much leader they had out there, but they'd hit it and boof, they were off. So they have soft mouths. A couple things you can do if you're fishing a lake that has big fish in it is slow the boat down a little bit. I do this at Willamette Lake. If I hook into a big kokanee, it will actually slow my boat speed down below 1 mile an hour. The other thing you can do is you can turn the boat into the fish if you need. So if your boat's going like this in the back end and I hook a fish on the right-hand side and I know it's a big kokanee, I will slow my boat down and actually turn my boat into the fish. This allows the person that's reeling in the fish to, his line's not going to be as tight because I really slowed that side down, sped up the outside, slowed down the inside, and it gives the person a little bit better advantage on reeling that fish in. The other thing is don't try to force that fish into a direction that you want it to go. So see this a lot, you hook it on the right-hand side, I'm going to net it on the right-hand side. Let the fish tell you where he wants to go. If the fish decides he wants to go to the left, take him to the left. If he wants to stay in the middle, if he wants to go to the back, to the right. I've literally, on some bigger fish, gone back and forth 3 or 4 times before I figured out you don't want to pull against that fish to try to net him. Let him figure out where he wants to go. The other thing is don't show that fish your net. I see this a lot. You'll have somebody out there with a 40-foot handled net. They throw it out in the middle, and then they're expecting the guy that's reeling it in to bring it into the net. Big no-no. I like actually stabbing at the fish like I would a salmon. So when he gets up next to the boat, take the net, stab in, grab him. You don't need a huge handled net. They're super awkward. They're horrible inside the boat. You're going to hit people in the head. You have no control over something that far out. I use it's about a 6 foot, but just enough handled. The only time I would say you might need a longer net is if you had a platform boat with railing on it in order to get down. But other than that, I just use a short one. The other good thing is if you have somebody that knows how to drive your boat, you can have the person that's driving the boat help steer the boat and help the person that's reeling in the fish and the person netting. So if you can imagine the back end of your boat is a stage, the fish is in the middle, maybe he wants to go to the right, you can just take the back end of your stage and stage it back to the right so that you can bring him in the middle. And if I'm driving the boat and I have like my uncle on the boat, I can basically say we're going here or there. Or sometimes if I need to make a turn because I got a boat, I'll yell at the person driving, hey, you need to go to the right-hand side of the boat because we're doing it that way. So I'm going to show you a video. I think it's my wife. This is my wife reeling in a fish. And I just want to show you, it's already gone through the thrash phase, but just how slow. That's my father-in-law, Jerry, and he does a pretty good job netting. It's just a slow, easy reel in. You got something super expensive. The other thing I want to show you is sometimes these fish, if you can get their head partially out of the water, you're going to see this right here, they stop fighting. At that point, you can reel them in a little bit faster. I call it skateboarding. But it's that their head gets out of the water. A lot of times, I don't know what it is. They'll just quit for a while, and you can skate them in. So just nice and easy. They're a fragile fish. These are a few things I just wanted to go over, and then I'm going to open it up to Q&A of things that I think about or that you should think about when you're out there, and kind of how I dial stuff in. So first off, your research is super important. If you go to a lake that has horrible kokanee fishing, doesn't matter what you do or how good of a fisherman you are, you're going to have a bad day of fishing. So do your research, make your phone calls, talk to your friends. The one thing I will tell you not to do is do not call a resort or a lodge and ask them how fishing is, because it's always going to be fantastic. So, because they want you to come over there. But if you, there's enough people on the internet, Facebook, I mean, do your research and get pictures. Pictures are worth way more than somebody saying they're catching 38-inch fish wherever. So do your research. Make sure you're using your electronics properly. This is a whole nother seminar. I mean, I could go into electronics for about 3 hours, but if you're one of those people that gets on your boat, turns on your electronics, and that's all you're doing, you're not using them properly. You should be able to dial it into the point where you know what kind of fish you're looking at on your electronics. If you're fishing towards the bottom, you should be viewing the bottom. If you're fishing towards 60 to 70 feet, I only want to use that range. Make sure you're using the right frequencies. The electronics are huge, but if you're not using them properly, it's not going to do you any good. You might as well just throw them away. So my boat, I know what I'm looking at. I know where they're at, and then at that point, then I can figure them out. So make sure you're not one of those people that just turns your electronics on and you got little fish floating around and it's beeping at you all the day, because that's not how you use them. So make sure you're using your electronics. Make sure you find fish before you start fishing. This is a huge one, especially at Odell Lake. Most of the people will start out in the West Bay, and they start out in the West Bay even if the West Bay doesn't have fish, just because they've been fishing it that way for 30 years, and they're going to the West Bay. On my boat, I usually start my boat up, and I hit my normal spots where I'm looking for fish, and if I find a spot that's got fish, then I start fishing. I'm not going to just go travel to the West Bay and go, please, baby Jesus, let there be fish in here. I want to find them first, and I'm using my electronics properly so I can look around, say, hey, look, we got a lot of fish over here, or nah, there's not enough, I want to go to a different spot. So make sure you find them before you start fishing, because if I'm in the East End, which is where I'm located, and I decide I'm going to start here and the fish are in the West Bay, it's going to take me 4 hours of trolling in order for me to get to the other end. So if I race down there, it takes me about 5 minutes, and I can turn on my electronics and go, woo, lots of fish here. This is where I want to be. So make sure you locate those fish before you start fishing. Another big one is don't leave fish to find fish. Last year was really, really difficult. There was some areas of the lake that the fish were stacked in pretty heavy, and I would keep going over them and try dialing that area in. And then I'd have somebody come by and go, "Hey, how you doing?" And I said, "Well, there's a bunch of fish here. You can follow me if you want, but I mean, there's a ton of fish right here. I'm going to keep going through them until I figure out what's going on." They'd make 1 or 2 passes with me, boom, they're gone. And I didn't see a lot of fish in that lake. Another boat would come by. Eventually, I figured out what they wanted, and I just crushed them. But I didn't leave those fish to go try finding more fish. I already knew there was way more fish in that area. It was over by Gull Point, and there was thousands and thousands of fish in there. My job was to figure out my variables and dial it in to the point where I could limit out, and then I was done. I wasn't just going, "Well, these guys aren't biting, let's just go somewhere else." There's other things that you can figure out. But if you're using your electronics properly, you know you're looking at fish, you know they're kokanee. If you find them, keep going over them until you figure out what those variables are. Don't be the person that goes out fishing where you put your rod out, you got your presentation, you don't touch it the rest of the day. You might rebait it, but you're not switching your dodger out, you're not switching your lure out. You're just going to troll that one lure that did really good 3 weeks ago, and dang it, those suckers better hit it. So I'm always switching my gear out. I keep switching it out. I switch lures out. I switch dodgers out. If I go over a monster school of kokanee and I know I've gone through a school of 300 fish and none of my rods got hit, I'm switching those suckers out. I'm trying something different. Another big one people don't do is phone a friend. Normally, if I go to a lake, I try doing a little bit of advertising and saying I'm going to be at a lake. I try finding out how many other boat owner people I've got out there that I trust, and I might call 4 or 5 people on the lake. You can actually fish 4 or 5 different spots in the lake if you've got a friend that's fishing it, and you can get information from them like, "Hey, what are you seeing? What depth are you at? What color are you using? Hey, I've only hooked like 3 over here. I'm going to start heading your way." The phone a friend is super, super important. These here are my dial it in basically the order that I do it. Location, again, if you're fishing a bad location with no fish in it, not going to catch anything. So your location's number 1. Number 2 is the color of your lure. Super, super important. And when I say color, it could be as easy as you have a pink lure and a pink lure, and one has a silver blade on it and one has a gold blade on it. That's simple. The silver one might not catch a thing. The gold one, you're going to catch 100 fish that day. They're really, really picky on certain days. So dialing in that color is really important. The next is the action. Every lure has different action between spinning glows, wedding rings, apexes, wiggle hoochies, micey bugs, shrimp. They all have different actions. So that color and then that action are super important. Next would be your depth. Depth is very, very important. If you're fishing 10 feet down and the fish are all down at 90, probably not going to catch very many fish. So again, knowing what your electronics are showing you, making sure that you are in that depth range is important. I will say that if you have the location, color, and action of what exactly those fish want, they will travel a long distance to hit gear. Because I have had them on my screen at 20 feet traveling down to 80 feet to attack my lure presentation. Or if I drop a downrigger down, they will follow it down. So the depth is important, but not as important as your color and action and the location. If you're in with fish and you have the right color, the action, then your depth is going to be good. Speed of your boat, super important. You can have all these variables in and you're traveling at 2.5 miles an hour, probably not going to catch a fish. So early season, a little bit slower speed. Later in the season, as the water warms up, you want to warm up. My average is probably 1.1 to about 1.4. I have been on the lake where they wanted me traveling at 1.9. So that is fast, but speed's important. Then I would go dodger color. I do like matching my dodger color with the lure. This is a pink purple with a pink purple lure. So I don't know if it's just OCD, but I do like, if I'm using a lure with a gold blade, I usually like a gold dodger. A silver lure with a silver blade, I like a silver dodger. Next would be scent. So in those variables, those are the things that you need to figure out when you're out on the lake. And then the other thing is, first thing in the morning or when it's cloudy, does anybody use a black light on their boat? So if you have something that is glow, by charging that lure up, this lure here is a pink purple micey bug. The actual hook on it glows, plus all the beads. I always charge this up before I deploy it. It glows. So you're going to get a lot more light in it, especially first thing in the morning or if it's cloudy out. These black lights are fantastic. A flashlight will work, but if you accidentally get it shined in your eyes at 6 o'clock in the morning, you're going to hate it because you aren't going to see anything. These doesn't bother me. So black lights. Right. I'm just checking time. We got tons of time. Cool. I'm going to open it up to Q&A. Does anybody have any questions? Yes.
Do you like to go straight or use zigzag?
Good question. So I don't know if we have people that don't have downriggers and they only long line. If you long line, you zigzag all day long. So you've got your two lines out there. They go off to the side. As soon as they straighten out, take another turn. Drive like a drunken sailor. For downrigger fishing, what I like doing is I know my setback. So I might be a 30-foot setback. I know I've gone directly over a school of fish. I wait, then make my turn. So I'm driving straight until I know my presentation's within that school. And then I would zigzag all day long. Yep, all day long, doesn't matter. Yep, you want those long lines.
We found out that as soon as she turns, my wife drives the boat all the time, as soon as she turns, bam, we get a hit.
Right.
And what that's telling me is I'm going too fast or I'm not deep enough.
Well, it's two things. If you have a side of the boat that's consistently getting hit off of a zig, then you know if I take my boat and I turn it this direction, this side of my boat is now slowed down and it's dropped a little bit. So if that side of the boat's getting hit, and then if you make another turn this direction and now this side of the boat's getting hit, you know that your depth's probably off a little bit, but that's not as important as the speed because those fish will travel. I mean, if you're within 20 feet of those fish, they're going to go all over the place. But that would be speed. I had a day at Green Peter with my father-in-law, and we were doing circles across from the island in this one area, and I was just doing a big circle. And his rod was just going nonstop. I mean, just one after another, just boom, 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 just giving my wife a horrible time. Nothing on her side, hers was going too fast. And I said, Deb, you ready to catch some fish? She's like, yeah, what the heck's going on? Went the other direction. His rod went dead, and her rod just blew up. So I didn't fight it, I just kept doing it. But yeah, just knowing what your presentation is doing in the water at times that you do that is huge. Yeah, and I probably, if you made a turn and this side got hit and then you made a turn this way and this side, I would say that your boat speed needs to be turned down a little bit. But I usually wait till my presentation is in the fish, and then I might do like a crazy zigzag where I go like right, slow my boat down, speed it up a little bit, go left. I'm trying to aggravate those fish. So, and that can help out a lot for you. Good question.
Yeah. Could you spend a minute on Detroit Lake? What you like?
What I like at Detroit? I like fishing when the weather's warmer. So what are you planning on going soon? Yeah, I know some. Yeah, so this is winter time. The fishing was pretty good. The water temperature's starting to drop now, so these fish are going to start getting lockjawed a little bit. They're going to be up towards the surface, and then eventually here towards the winter, you're probably going to start seeing them drop pretty deep. As soon as they drop deep, I call those guys non-biters. And I've had some people that have done pretty good jigging when they get in these big balls down there. If I was going up like tomorrow, I'd probably fish somewhere between 5 feet and 20 feet in the water column, 50 feet back. I'd have my downriggers and I'd clip them to my clip. I'd probably drop them down 15 feet. I'd do another set of 50 feet back stack and drop that one down till the clip's just under the water. So I'm going to have one presentation running at maybe 5 feet, and this one here is probably going to be running at 18. So, and I like early season, or when I go to Wallowa Lake, I like everything at the same distance out, so it's like a wall. So if I have a fish that comes up on an upper one and then he decides to go on the lower one, or I've got multiple fish, when I fish Wallowa, I do 50 feet back. I've got two on the top 2 here down below, about 12 feet below them. And then my side ones I use if I see fish down deep, I might start targeting them down, but those are also up towards the surface. So I've got 2 up high, 2 a little bit deeper, and then 2 a little bit deeper, but all at 50 feet. It's almost like you're steelhead fishing in a river and you're trying to get the fish to come up. So that's kind of how I attack that. And you'd want to troll fairly slow, maybe 1 mile an hour up there. I'd probably launch it at Mongold, and I'd probably try out by blowout. It's going to be getting some feed coming in from the river system a little bit on that. So.
Do you always stack, Jeremy?
I always stack. Well, take that back. I don't always stack. If it's just me and the wife on the boat, I have 4 downriggers. So at that point, I run 1 rod per downrigger. And then once I figure out what they want, I have 2 rods locked and loaded, ready to go. So they've already got bait on them. They've got the Dodger, the exact lure that I'm using on the other 4. And then what I do is I take the Dodger and cover the 2 pieces of corn so the sun doesn't hit it. And then if we hook a fish on like my back downrigger, we'll reel that in. It'll get netted, and as soon as that fish leaves the water, my wife's got one of the ones that's locked and loaded, and she's already pulling out, and that's already getting dropped down before I can even unhook that fish and throw it into the cooler and then rebait that. And if you time it, sometimes fish are easier to take off the hook than others, but if you time that time it takes for you to take the fish off, put it in the cooler, fix your hooks, rebait it, then deploy it, probably takes a minute to 2 minutes maybe. And if you're catching 60 fish a day, a minute to 2 minutes adds up to a lot of time that you're not fishing. I always tell people, can't catch a fish if the rod's not in the water. So I want to try deploying my stuff as fast as possible. So I call that speed fishing, and it works really, really well. I usually don't speed fish until I know exactly what they want, but I'll have a presentation already re-rigged if I want to switch. Then pop it, have my wife reel it in, and as soon as that presentation loses the water, the other one's out, clipped and down, and then we're going. So I'm always thinking in my head, what's the fastest way to get the rods back in the water or redeployed all the time? I'm always trying to, my dad said as soon as I started this business, I'd always be under the pressure to catch fish, so I always feel like I'm under.
Do you drop fast, Jeremy?
I have Canon Digitrolls on my boat, and I run them at speed 3, which is a medium speed, but it has a soft stop, so it'll go down, and it's not super fast, but then when it gets close to the depth, it slows way down and kind of does a real slow stop. I don't know what kind of downriggers.
I've got Scotty's 1106.
Yeah, so you're going to have a clutch. I would go slow with those. You know.
I've seen some people go,
No, it's bad. No, I've seen people do this and then let go too, and then their weight falls off. So, yeah, mine are power up, power down. I just keep it at 3 is what I do. It's not super fast. It's not super slow. And even retrieving it up, I keep it at speed 3. I could go faster, but usually if we hook a fish, reel it in, I just hit auto up, and then it's waiting for me to deploy it. Good question, though. You got anything else? Yep.
Can you talk about color change from morning to afternoon?
Color change from morning to afternoon. So here's what I've learned about color. And there's people that have, certain water depths, you use certain colors and all that. I prefer using the color that the fish want to hit. And they say that pink isn't pink when it hits at 90 feet, and orange is but I will tell you there's a huge difference between pink and orange at 90 feet, because I can be using the exact same Dodger, the exact same lure, the exact same blade, or the exact same spinning globe, but one's orange and one's pink, and I won't get a bite on orange, but pink's just clobbering them like crazy. So figuring out what color those fish want is my first priority. So a good example is me up at Odell Lake. Normally they want pink or they want orange. There are some times they do like chartreuse, and one of those times is when we have an algae bloom, but I can almost guarantee you it's going to be pink or orange, and if I can't hook them on those two, then I'm switching to blacks, whites, and a bunch of other stuff. So I've got my 6 rods in the morning, one side's pink, one side's orange. I'm driving out, fish bite starts happening, and it's all on my left side. So I know, boop, orange is garbage, that's going off. So I've got 3 separate presentations in pink. I know they're not hitting orange. I pull my orange off, I put 3 completely different presentations in pink out, because I know it's pink. So now I'm visualizing it like I got a radio station, and I'm just slowly dialing it in. So maybe they want a pink micey bug, but maybe they want a pink micey bug with a silver blade, or maybe they want a pink super mice. So maybe they want a small presentation. Maybe they want a big presentation. Maybe they want a wedding ring, or maybe they want an apex in pink, but they want the pink with the sparkles on it, not just the flat pink. Or maybe they want the pink with the UV stripe on it. I mean, that's your job to figure that out. So it's just slowly dialing that in, and then once you have it, there is no question, because you're going to be just going nonstop, and then I switch everything to that exact same presentation, and that's what I do until that bite dies, and then you're back to square one. Maybe they want orange now, or maybe they want green. I mean, who knows? But you slowly dial that in, and then take advantage of that moment and try attacking as many fish as possible to get on your boat, which comes into having a good crew that knows how to net, get gear down. There's a whole big thing of, making sure you're taking advantage. Last year at Odell, that first early morning bite, you had to literally just clobber them during that period of time. It was usually about an hour, otherwise you were really missing out. So, yeah. You had a question? Yep.
The clip you had, where do you get it?
So you can buy them from me, because I sell them, but they're manufactured by a company called Dubros.
DUBREUS or something like that.
And I won't be able to read it. It's on here. But that's the company that manufactures them. It's right here on this, and I got contacts in.
Okay.
Yep, Dubros, and you need a small little flathead screwdriver. And the biggest mistake people make is they turn it too hard. When you first buy them, they're spread out pretty far. You need to make a major adjustment. Once you get your line kind of where you want it, if you just barely think about turning it, it makes a huge change. So it's just barely turning it. Once you have it set, I usually can go the whole season and I don't have to worry about it. The other thing I will tell you about this clip is make sure all your rods have the exact same diameter line on it and the exact same brand. Because if you go out with 10-pound Maxima and your other guy's got 12-pound Stren or 10-pound Stren, or he's got this, these clips will not work. They're that sensitive. So you need the same line, brand, and diameter on all your rods that you're using. Otherwise, you will be making adjustments all day long, clipping them back and forth. If I have a rod over here, I might want to put it on this one. Well, because I've got 12-pound here and 10 here, they won't interchange. So it's really important that you have this. So if somebody asks me, hey, do you want me to bring my rods? It's like, no, I want you to leave them at the house. We're going to use mine because I've got mine all set. So it's that sensitive of a release. But the release is once you have them set, the release is exactly the same all the time. So I know it's going to be super light every time I put it. It's super easy. There's no spinning it around metal. You just pop it in, go down. Make sure, again, I like mine really loose so I don't have a lot of pressure, down pressure when it's going down on the downrigger. I'm leaving it a little bit loose. And people will say, well, then you get too much blowback. Don't worry about it, because when that fish pops it off and he's got all that slack and he's wrapping it around, he might get your main line wrapped in his gills. He ain't coming off. He's roped. So I don't run to my rods when I'm grabbing them. My favorite thing to do is when I'm on the boat, somebody will be like, I have them labeled like, this one is L1, L2, L3, and this one's R1, R2, R3 for the rods. They'll be like, oh, R3, R3, R3. And I'm like, which one? They're like, get it, grab it. And I'm like, oh, that one, right? Okay, here, I'll go over and grab it, and I grab it. The other thing that's nice about having them pop on their own is how fast that rod reloads. So if a fish hits, you're gonna get the slack, so the rod's gonna pop up, and then as soon as he starts taking the weight, that rod's gonna load down. By knowing how fast that rod loads, you know how big of a fish it is. So if you're out with somebody that doesn't know, you see the rod pop up, it takes a long time for that fish to load, you have your friend reel in that one. If you see one pop up and it slams, I want that one. I was like, yeah, get that one, that's a good one over there. Yeah, so you can see by the weight of the fish on what kind. I can tell, like at Odell, you'll catch next year's fish, and then you got this year's fish. I could tell you by how fast that rod reloaded back down if that was a next year's fish or a this year's fish. So it's kind of funny. Just little things that I know that I'm like, hey, go grab that one. That looks like a good one. They bring it in, it's a little dank. Yeah, so. Well, I don't know about that. I pay attention, and I I pay attention to my boat. And even when I get done fishing for the day, I break down the whole day in my head. And I'm like, God, if I would have did this, or why didn't I go over there? There was some weird areas I fished this year at Odell that I've never fished before, just because that's where the fish were at. I fished at 60 feet of water over by the cabins, over by Trapper Creek. Absolutely crushed them over there, and nobody was bothering me because I don't know why they didn't want to come in that shallow. I got downriggers, so I was fishing right off the bottom for them. I had a whole weekend over in that area all by myself. I came home and I posted something on YouTube, and I couldn't get in. I was like, you idiot, what are you doing? I mean, literally the next weekend there was like 30 boats in shallow, and I was like, crap, why did I say that? Yeah, they were in there pretty heavy, and it was July, and there was people in like little float tubes and paddle boards that were off Trapper Creek, and I'm going in between them, and it was pretty fun. But I've never fished that area before, but I knew there was fish in there, and so that's where I was at. I think there's a lot of Mackinaw in the lake, plus they put in a whole bunch of bull trout. They're really harassing those kokanee in that lake, and they're balling up in these big bait balls. So I was really looking for fish that were more spread out and relaxed. So when I trolled through them, they'd want to leave and follow. It was a difficult year last year. Actually, the last 2 years, there's not as many fish in the lake, which means they're going to get bigger, but it's a little bit more work. I mean, back in the day, I used to just go in a straight line and just be school after school after school and get almost to the other end of the lake and turn around and come back. But there's some dead spots in that lake for sure this year. Yep.
So if you're fishing Odell and you're down at the west end,
Yep.
it's dark, you slay them like crazy, and right when the light hits, do you start heading east?
No, not necessarily. The reason for that is that lake's got shrimp in it. So when first light comes out, those fish are feeding pretty heavy, and so they're a little bit more aggressive. Then when that light comes up, the shrimps end up dropping to the bottom of the lake, and then they're kind of more, you might even see them dissipate. If those fish are still in that area, then I'm going to still fish for them. And I had last year, when that happened, that bite started slowing down. You'll just start seeing people move. I pretty much spent the whole day in the West Bay just nickeling and diming them out of there. So it will slow down. I recommend people getting up early, getting rigged up, and then drinking coffee. And then once that bite starts, then nobody's drinking coffee. Everybody's just working rods, getting everything geared up until that bite dies down. Then you can slow down a little bit. But I had some pretty productive days where I spent the whole day in the West Bay till the wind picked up, just hanging out. The bite's going to be perfect because when the bite's good, or you have like a really aggressive bite and they want pink, you can pretty much throw out any pink presentation and you're going to start catching fish. When the bite slows down, that's when these dialing in all the stuff makes all the difference in the world. You really got to be a little bit more. And that's why I like kokanee fishing. It's not the same every day. I'm playing chess with the fish. I'm trying to outsmart them, and it's just.
So let me get this really straight. You have to have every possible combination of fishing stuff in your box.
I have a pretty extensive amount of fishing. You'd be surprised on how much tackle I carry in my box, on my boat. You know. No, I got way more than that. You would. I when I did guided trips and I opened up my thing, everybody was like, "Holy!" It's like, well, you don't know. And I've been out before where I've only got a couple of something, and I'm cannibalizing stuff to match that hatch. Like, oh, I need this bead with this one and that one with these hooks, and it needs to be. So I mean, I got components on my boat where I can make more, or I've got a really hot bite with something and I've only got like 6 of them, and I might want to do a swap out with a lure real fast, so I'll manufacture another one. So I got a spare, and then when we bring it in, if one looks ratty, I take that one off, put that one on, remanufacture this one. So I'm making sure my stuff's all good. But yeah, having an extensive amount of tackle is good for me because I'm a manufacturer. But it can be pretty weird. My dad, when he was first starting out fishing for kokanee up at Plina Lake, fishing was horrible. They weren't catching anything. And he had this beat up old Super Duper in the bottom of his tackle box. and put a piece of corn on, threw it out, wham, fish on, all weekend long, fish on, only one he had. So he's like going, oh my God, I found the best lure ever. So he went into town, and him and his buddy were racing around to the different sporting goods stores, and he's like, hey, you got any super dupers? Like, oh no, some guy came in here and bought them all. He's like, what? So they're chasing each other, and yeah, he's never caught another fish on it. But that one point in time, that's what those suckers wanted. Yeah, and you just don't know. I mean, it's just, they're a picky little. The biggest kokanee my dad ever caught, he caught it on a grub, a green grub, and it was about this big with a curly tail, and he had taken scissors and cut it at an angle so it would swim weird in the water, and he caught a 7.7 pound kokanee out of Willamette Lake with that grub. Who would have known? But I mean, that's just what that fish wanted. So yeah, just kind of weird.
When you see a great big school of fish on your fish finder,
Mm-hmm.
Jeremy, and people say, oh, that's too far down, they're not biters.
If it's early season and the water temperature's cold, that can be a possibility. They're in kind of a hibernation mode. But like if it's July or August, and those fish are not in a super tight bowl, but kind of those will hit. We saw that up at Detroit. We were fishing down at 120 feet. So just because a fish is down deep doesn't mean they won't hit. So you need to go through them and find out. There was one big, huge school of fish of about 1,000 last year at Odell that was pretty close to the bottom. Huge school of fish. But it had Mackinaw work in it, and I couldn't get them to hit anything. They were just balled up too tight. Am I close? Yep, I'm getting close. So thank you, everybody, for coming by. I got to let the next person in, but I will be over at my booth. My wife's over there, and she catches way more fish than me anyway. So.
They always do, don't they?
Yeah.